right, Coach Young here. Man, it has been a long time coming.
Yeah,
That's
man.
for sure. Um, Probably what I'd say, like, yeah, last cross country season kind of linked up a little bit there on X, formerly Twitter. Um, just first off, man, how you been? Obviously, it's been just such a roller coaster of a year since then, obviously, and just like everything going on.
It's never a dull moment over here in Clover. I'm busy 24/7 to get kind of where we are at our program. There's no downtime. I'm constantly working on something. Big part of my time in the summer is doing coursework, and I do coursework on developing our cross country course, pretty much year round maintenance and whatnot. And so, and we're in the thicket of our summer training. And so I'm coordinating, as I think you've seen, I coordinate team sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays afternoons. And then we have our Monday through Thursday morning team general workout sessions. And so it's busy. To get where we're at Clover, it's truly nonstop, and that's just the name of the game. If you want to succeed in South Carolina, and try to play catch up with these top dogs like Malden and Blythewood and Fort Mill and Catawba and Spring Valley, and there's a bunch of those great teams out there that just they're tough, man. And so you got to grind. You got to be prepared to put in the work.
Yeah, man, we're gonna get into how you create a course in the first place. I think that's one of the coolest things to build, and I think even as a runner, you're just so accustomed to just showing up to the course and running it, let alone the all that goes into it, especially a cross country course for that matter. Um, but I want to get first to just how you got involved in running. I know you were like a stud back in the day. Am I right? Like,
Well, I don't know. Some of us runners, we tend to think we hang a lot on how we performed in college. And while I did have some success in high school with a few state titles, uh, uh, Division 1 chewed me up and spit me out in college. But I wanted to say, first of all, before we got started, that, and I've shared this with you before, but for your audience, I just wanted to share again how appreciative I am of what you're doing for our sport and the coverage you're providing to all of our programs. I've watched your interviews with the other teams and how you're highlighting all these phenomenal runners, gaining insight from these extraordinary coaches, Coach Sands and Coach Kelly. And I just applaud that, man. We need that in our sport. The more insight that people get from what we do and how we grind and the sacrifices we make, the better it makes our sport. And so I can't say it enough. I'm really appreciative of what you do.
I appreciate it, Coach.
But as far as my story, I started running. Well, I'd always enjoyed running, but I started running officially in eighth grade. I had been kind of a funny story. I'd been going to after school math class, and and I wanted to be involved in some sports. My grandfather took a keen interest in my academics, and I struggled in math. And so, but we were we financially struggled as a family, so we didn't have I didn't have access to the ability to play sports, funding, transportation, and whatnot. But my grandfather took keen interest in my academics, and I struggled in math, and so basically I had started going to after school math class. Had a really great math teacher, Debbie Wheat. She had uh, helped me out in my math class. I got my grades up, and I used that as an opportunity to skip after school math classes because I was in good graces. And I started going to weightlifting, football weightlifting. And so my grandfather was under the impression that I was going to math class, but I was going to weightlifting, and I had two wonderful PE teachers in at my middle school. One was a basketball coach, Danny Holland, and then the other was a football coach, Coach Wanta. And Coach Wanta, every time we had PE class, I didn't miss a beat. I would always hit the track, whether it was pants and shoot, whatever I was wearing. I just loved to run on the track. And so fast forward to these weight football conditioning sessions. Um, Coach Wanta, I was at one of the sessions, and Coach Wanta called me out of one of the conditionings, and he's like, Chris Young, I need to see you. And I thought, well, oh goodness, the gig's up. They found out that I've been skipping math class, and my grandfather's probably mad. I'm in trouble. And Coach Wanta pulled me to the side, and my peers were like, oh, Chris is in trouble. And Coach Wanta pulled me off to the side and said, Young, I have no doubt you'd be a phenomenal football player for our program. You're a driven young man, and I think the world of you, but your heart belongs somewhere else. And he's like, I want to introduce you to the track coach. And would you be willing to do that for me? Would you go speak to the track coach for me? And I was like, well, sure, Coach Wanta. When you're a kid that young, and when a man has this view of you of really thinking you could do something better, it's kind of empowering. You feel like you got to,
Yeah.
And so I went and met the track coach, and the track coach at the time was Allen County's premier distance runner. He had all the distance records and this and that, and so he had come back to coach at the school, and Adam Cross. So he said, Coach Wanta introduced me, and Adam said, so when can you start running? And I said, well, I can start running right now. And he said, I said, well, but I have a problem. I don't have transportation to and from practice. I'm kind of concerned about that. I've been lying to my grandparents, and Adam was like, well, we'll find you a ride. And I was like, really? And so the ride situation worked out, but I had to confess to my grandparents that this was going on. And so it was the first time in my life that I didn't really hold back with my grandparents. I was honest with them, and they said, well, you can't do it. We can't afford it. We can't transport you. We can't afford shoes and stuff. And I remember vividly, I stood in my living room. Makes me emotional thinking about it. I stood in my living room, and I looked at him, and I said, well, I'm gonna run, and nobody's gonna stop me. I don't care if I have to run back and forth to school. I just don't care. I'm gonna do it. And I defied my grandparents, and that started my journey. And then I was a scrub, man. I just had tenacity. I was just a fierce kid. I just was very driven. I like team sports, but I like playing basketball. Basketball was my favorite. But there was something about the individuality of running that helped me escape. I liked all the pressure being on myself, and so and then in the fall of my freshman year, I started cross country, and I had a fantastic cross country coach. He was also the biologist at my school, and he was a huge mentor in my life. And so my freshman year in cross country, track was always a little bit more difficult than to qualify for state. But my freshman year in cross country, I qualified. I placed 66th in the state. And then my sophomore year, I placed 69th. And then my junior year, I placed 10th. And then I was going to go for it. And then my senior year, I won state. And then I went on to win several other track titles. So that's how it all started, man. It's a long story, but it's kind of tells you a little, gives you a little insight about the struggles and how I think the highlight of that is not having those coaches not being so selfish and targeting me for their own specialty sports like basketball and football, seeing how wonderful of a runner I was. They saw a vision that other coaches didn't see, and they said, hey, we want to give you to track and cross country, and we want to see you do something big. And that really started it, man. I just, I can't, I look at sports so much and I see football players and basketball players and kids sitting the bench and those two coaches taking time out to say, hey, you got the right stuff for track. They saw a vision before I even did. And man, things just happened. And so I owe a debt of gratitude to Coach Awana and Coach Holland. So that's a shout out to them because I'm sure they're going to watch this. So,
Yeah, and our great story. I think there's so many times where, at least when I was running in high school, in middle school, I never really asked my coach like their journey and their story, and I don't know if your runners know all that about you, but it's fascinating because it's so there's so much more to it. You know, obviously they may know you're state champion, but they may not know how you got started and all that. Um, but it's such a fascinating story because everybody does have such a unique way into the sport. And that's really unique. I've never really heard quite an experience like that. Now, running is, being a runner is one thing. Coaching, I think, is just another mode to the beast of it all. Um, did you, while you were running in high school, did you ever think maybe you would want to coach one day, or like how did that kind of all come to be?
well, my cross country coach, Rick Roberts, he had a heavy influence because he loved us unconditionally. He had this way of painting a picture for you before you even realize it. Like he would say things when I was just, a freshman running like 22:30s or something. He would say, I can see you up on the stage one day winning state titles and doing things. And I'm like, man, this guy's crazy. He's just trying to fluff me up for, just building my ego but,
Yeah.
uh, but he would be really vivid in helping you understand like, hey, there's a dream out there. If you just want to, if you want to reach for the stars, go for it, buddy. And so, I always valued that, and so I don't know. I guess I admired his coaching abilities, and I don't know if I ever foresaw myself coaching, but I enjoyed communicating with people. I was a sales director of a health club for a few years. So communication, working with people was good. I worked in special needs and also worked in a juvenile detention like program. And so I liked working with youth, oppositional defiant youth, things of that nature. So I guess I don't know if I really. I mean, my degree is in exercise science, so I wanted to do something kind of applied uh, to that. But I didn't. I guess I didn't realize that I was ready to be a coach until I coached at a program in Kentucky, Franklin Simpson. I had a whole lot of success my first year there. I knew I had something special, and so that's when things really started rocking for me in my coaching career.
And so it's cool that you mentioned that too. You know, being in the army, you always take from different leaders. Obviously in this case, different coaches, and some of the good, some of the bad. How do you think that have you taken a lot from other kind of mentors and coaches around to kind of mold like your own philosophy and kind of what you built at Clover so far?
Yeah, I mean, really, I really got to toss a lot of credit towards my high school cross country coach, and I also had an amazing coach that came into my track program. I had two coaches later on in high school in my track program because Rick didn't coach my track program. But I had a chiropractor, Craig Gillum. He came in and volunteered to coach our program, and he was very scientific based. He used Bill Dillinger's program from Oregon, he had a book that he went over, and he was very scientific. And I really, I get a rise off of that because it's one thing to coach an athlete, but it's another thing if you teach them why we're doing the specific principles and what we're trying to do, what we're trying to develop. And so Craig was phenomenal. And then Larry Johnson was another coach that was instrumental in just support. Uh, Larry was always the first to say, well, I didn't really know what I was doing. But in my experience now as a coach, he provided a safe harbor. He made sure that we had the things necessary to be successful. He supported Craig Gillum in coaching me, where he could have said, Craig, you can't coach this program. I'm the head coach. You can't be here. But he supported that, and he wanted the best for me. And so he was really integral in that. So when I look at all those high school coaches were fundamental in my development. And then after that, I had a really good, a very compassionate collegiate coach, Curtis Long at Western Kentucky University. I had a lot of hardships in college. Life was difficult there. I went from, being the big dog to, in D1 getting smacked around. And psychologically, if you don't have the support at home, if you don't really have a good support group, it can be detrimental. It's not like high school sports. It's, and you're on scholarship. I was on a full ride at Western, and it became, it's like you're a professional athlete, essentially. You got a standard that you got to uphold. And so that was really difficult. But Coach Curtis Long was very patient and compassionate with me. And so all those coaches that I had personal experience with, uh, they all poured into my coaching philosophies. And then after that, if I'm being completely honest, the only other coach that had a running influence was I read Running with the Buffaloes by Chris Lear, is it? But Mark Wetmore's some of the stuff that they highlight in that book, and and the specificity in training and stuff. And of course, my degrees in exercise science. So when I take everything that my coaches and then the applied exercise science aspect, that's all I really. That's it. The philosophies and everything come together on a science basis. With yeah.
Yeah, and so again, and it kind of goes into this whole kind of question I kind of want to pose, and it's building a team. So when you have, again, all of these ideas and coaching philosophies from all your mentors and leaders, and then obviously, you probably have a spin on it yourself from the things that you've been through and the races you've been through. Um, Putting together a team, now they have to buy into what you're selling essentially.
Yeah.
The go into, I want to know, the importance that you have, especially again, and we're talking about Clover here, because you really did you've taken that team and have really built it up. Um, how do you go into, or I guess how did you go into getting people to buy in to just being that unified team?
Um, it was kind of unique. It's kind of funny because when we moved to Clover in 2019, my daughter was in fourth or fifth grade, and I coached a little program called Let Me Run. It's for boys, and you're just helping boys develop and giving them encouragement and stuff. And so I started coaching that program, and then COVID happened, and it shut that whole operation down. But I heard rumblings in the community, like people were saying, "Hey, you need to go over to Clover High, and we need you over there to do some work." And I was like, "Well, I can't do it until my daughter's in seventh grade. Anything that takes me away from the family, I can't do. My wife and kids are first. Jesus, wife, kids. That's kind of the young family plan here." And so when my daughter, when she entered seventh grade, she was like, "All right, okay, Dad, I'm ready to run." And I was like, "Well, it's game time. Here we go. We're not playing any games now. Let's do this." And so I am full throttle when I get involved in something. And I have a wonderful wife. She's been married. We've been married 19 years, July 22nd. And but when I get involved in something, she knows like it's about to get serious. And so I came in on Clover's program as a volunteer. Kevin Huggins was the head coach, and a lot of times you can have a coach at an assistant role, but they head a lot of the development while another coach is doing administrative stuff and whatnot. And so I came in, with my background, my strong personality, and just started networking with the kids. Having a child in a program is always helpful because then, for instance, my girls, they're like, okay, he's got a daughter. And so he's not just some crazy guy. He's got his daughter involved. So he's vested in
Yeah.
that sense. And so it was really easy for me to warm up to the girls' squad first because McKenna was involved so much. And the first young lady that I had a really good working relationship with was Ella Nyber. And back then I had a beard that was super duper long. I kind of probably looked like a weirdo. Ella told me this past track season we were warming up at Distance Carnival, and we were talking about her first impression of me, and she said, "Yeah, I didn't know what you were about." She was like, "This guy can't possibly be serious." And so Ella and I developed a pretty good working relationship, and I got to know her dad pretty well, and they started seeing some of the scientific stuff I was sharing with them, and the patience that she needed to have. Girls will go through various stages of development, and sometimes they'll plateau, sometimes they'll run slower, and then and because they're in a unique phase of development, and and so Ella was in a transitional period of time, and she was really stressed out because she was running super fast one year, but then the next year she fell off, and it really, really messed with her. And I had to talk to her uh, quite often to say, hey, we got to be patient. Look, we're this close. This is what's going on. Break it down for her. And so with Ella, I think Ella was my first door into the program to get the kids to buy in. Boys are a little different. I was able to kind of use my history of my personal success, and the boys were more prone to listening and being like, "Oh, okay, coach is the real deal." But a combination of the two, both my previous success and in breaking things down to the kids, Ella, Ava, painting a vision for even them, saying, "Hey, we can win state, in a few years." Ava, I used to say this stuff to Ava all the time, and she thought I was absolutely crazy. And she never imagined that she had ran a 5:07 this season. It wasn't even in the realm of her
Yeah.
thoughts. And so to get those girls to kind of believe in the vision and to trust me, it took a lot of work, but it was a lot of discussions with the parents, being super duper transparent. Writing paper. I mean, I've wrote books on top of books of information to parents saying, "Hey, this is what's going on. We need to make sure we're checking iron counts. We need to do this." And it gave the parents an opportunity to check. Is he being serious? Is this factual? And when they started seeing that I was sharing the truth, then people just buy in. Like, this guy is being truthful. It's proven stuff, and so it kind of got the ball rolling, man. When you got a couple kids buying in, and then the other big thing is the next year. What you want to see is retention. You want to make sure like you didn't lose anybody from that first year you came in. And so when everyone came back the next year, I was like, okay, this is money. This is money. This is good. We're doing real good here. And we had a super young squad. We had seventh graders and mostly freshmen. And so the retention came around, and but Ella, Wade Ward, Alex Bolin, There's a few of them, the freshman crew, that really just believed me and trusted me in their program, and their parents did. And then after that happened, it took off. Things just took off, man.
Yeah, it's you mentioned your daughter, and I want to ask about that because I think that's also kind of just a really it kind of gets you like kind of an in, like you're saying. You can plus you can kind of hear like the ins and outs of what maybe some of the girls are saying as well. But
Yeah.
that relationship between you and your daughter and coaching her, um, do you find it easy to kind of be like, or do you like flip the switch a little bit from coach to dad? Like, are you is it easy to do that, or like at home are you still like, hey, you need to do this and that, or is it like you try and give her a little bit of space, or how does that all work?
It it is super duper hard. I'm a very high strung person, and I'm particular about her diet and her nutrition, in the sense that I don't want her cutting calories. I want to make sure she's getting the adequate amount of sleep. I look through everything through a scientific lens. Like, okay, well, you're not, you didn't get enough sleep last night, so you didn't, your growth hormone is not excreting adequately, and you're going to have more inflammation. You're not recovering. Your resting heart rate is up. 5 additional beats this morning compared to what it needs to be, honey. And she has her own expectations. McKenna has made tremendous progress too, and she's a stronger gal, and so developmentally she has to work on her strength right now. We're doing a big strength and conditioning component for her, with but for her, I try to dot my i's and cross my t's. I try to be as loving and compassionate as I can, but I'm also very factual. Like, I'm just like, hey, you want me to be honest with you, and so when she does really great, I tell her, like, honey, you knocked that out of the park. I'm proud of you. But if she does bad, I'm like, I can't lie to you, honey. Like, that was crappy. You didn't do, or you didn't sleep enough, or you didn't do this, and sometimes that hurts. And this past season, here's another thing that make me a little emotional. She had a bummer race, and I kind of scolded her a little bit, and she said, "I needed, I need you to be my dad right now, and not my coach." And man, that stuff hurts sometimes. You're like, ah, I'm missing the mark, because the last thing you want to do is push your child away from a sport that you love so much. And but we had a good talking about it, and uh, her and I always break it down, and I apologize, and I'm not so full of myself that I'm not afraid to say, "Oh, honey, I got it wrong. I'm sorry." Um, and I'm that way with really all of my runners, but my daughter, it's personal, so it's what we come home to, and she knows that I see what she doesn't do when she's being Captain Lazy Bones. Like, I get onto her a little bit, but so it's really difficult, because but we make it work, and I think there'll probably be a point where you'll interview her, and she would say, I wouldn't change it for the world. You know, my son is just starting with the program, and it's bringing us together in a different way than anything has in the program, or anything else has in our lives. And so it's unique, and it takes a lot of balance. And when you're really passionate, sometimes you can get in over your head, and things can be a little bit hurtful, and you didn't intend on them to be. But I don't know if that answers your question. It's kind of a long roundabout way of navigating through that, because just talking about it makes me emotional. Just thinking about my precious daughter, and being firm and honest with her, and it's just crazy. But we make it happen. We make it
Hmm.
happen.
Yeah, no, it really is. It really is so interesting because I can just envision, you know, even a workout, and you're yelling and you're getting into it, and hey, you need to pick it up, and there is that kind of like scene or feel to where it's like, I'm coaching a child, but that child is my kid, and they can take it some type of way at times, and um, yeah, that fine balance in between is always something to always work on. But it's great
Well,
to hear that you do have that.
the kicker is when your child wants to make you proud. Like, and they know, like, if they didn't perform their best, and the thought for them, the thought of disappointing you in those tough situations where they could be the number 7 person on the varsity squad, or they didn't quite make it, but they had a hope to make it. They're terrified of disappointing you because, you want your child in there, but sometimes they just don't cut it. And those are the hard things because my daughter is like, Dad, I want you to be proud of me. And and you have to be like, honey, I'm always proud of you. And you have to navigate through that carefully with compassion and love, and help empower them, to embolden them to rise above even those tough situations when they didn't achieve what they had hoped to achieve. Big
Yeah,
big
no,
balance.
yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure. I want to go a little bit here. I want to kind of mold it into still we're in cross country. Um, but I do want to ask, like, because you have taken Clover to what I think is definitely high reaching heights here. Um, but I am curious. I am so curious of this question of just how you went about creating a course, because I see you posting on X all the time. You just
Yeah,
made a new route this past weekend, I believe it was. Um,
yeah.
how did that all come about? Like, is that something you just envisioned? Like, you wanted a course at like there, or what?
Well, you'll learn talking to me. Nothing ever comes simple, an explanation. But I had some kind of unique thing about me as a kid that I just loved making maps. I don't know where it came from. I don't know if some of my ancestors was like Lois and Clark or something. Like, I have no idea, but I would just draw maps when I was a kid. Just weird. I don't know what's wrong with me. I guess it's kind of cool, but and I never imagined that it was going to lead to anything. But one thing that I recognized through coaching is that when it comes through running is we struggle financially. Our programs typically will struggle financially, and you need to find a revenue source. And the other element of that is, if your kids, a big part of development and having children rise to occasion is having ownership of something. Football's got their own football field. Basketball's got their own gymnasium. They got their own locker room. And when a child has ownership of something that they can call their own, that it's theirs, then it changed the whole dynamic, the psychology of the program. When they can take ownership of something, it makes it much more precious. Like, it makes them want to run in that area. And so when you think about the monetary aspect of trying to find a revenue stream, and then you think about providing ownership for the children, there's only one solution, especially in the sense of cross country. You need a cross country course. You need something special for them. And so at my previous program in Franklin Simpson, I get the lands. I always look at land survey guides and try to get an idea of what we have accessible, and I want to see where can we maximize our areas that we can run, because you also want to be safe. You want to keep your kids on a property where you can get to them easy, and provide them a safe environment. And so I developed a course at Franklin Simpson, and in that first year, it was the Wildcat Wilderness Invitational. I had a huge but I developed this course there, and my program there, we come out blazing fast. My kids were they saw that I was invested in developing that program, so they knew that I was legit about caring for them. I wanted to provide them some sense of ownership. Like, this is yours. This is not mine. This is for you. And so so that program, my boys in 2008, they won the regional title. And then my girls got runners up. And it was the first time in school history that ever happened. And so if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? And so this philosophy just kind of cranked in my head. And like I shared, I was a sales director, so you're always thinking of the psychology of things and how they work and how they impact. So when we came to Clover, um, the first thing I'm doing is like when you're building a program, all right, I got to give these kids some ownership of some property. I got to do something. And so I looked around and we have this beautiful piece of land that wasn't utilized. Like all this land, this lake, or I guess it's technically a pond, but I call it a lake. It looks more like a lake. But there's no paths around it. It wasn't maintained. It was all overgrown. And I'm like, we are totally missing out on the opportunity. And I'm like, well, I'm going to start clearing this out, and I'm kind of one, I'll just apologize later, ask for forgiveness later. So went out there and started clearing out around this back lake and providing clean weed eating and doing a bunch of work around the course. And then, uh, I was doing some excavation here at my place, and the gentleman that rented some equipment to me, I'd asked him. I said, "Hey, man, I coach track and cross country over at Clover. Uh, I don't suppose you'd be interested in sponsoring us with some equipment." And he's like, "Oh, you coach at cross country?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I ran for Clover and I graduated back in '98." And it's like, "Really?" And he was like, "I don't have any problem." I was like, "If you can just sponsor me with equipment, I can operate it just fine." And so we got approval from the district. And when the district approved it, man, I went in there with the skid steer and excavator and I started tearing a trail. And I just had a vision. I would hike throughout the woods and stuff. I mean, it was all overgrown. I got lit up by chiggers, unbelievably. Oh man, it was rough. But I just had a vision, a layout of how we wanted. I always modeled, back when I was in high school, I was really intrigued with how McAlpine Park's wooded section was, and I really like that because it's cool. It's a different element than what we typically experience because we're always running in open fields, and I'm like, man, this stuff is boring. Like, I hate this. And so at Franklin Simpson, I developed a wooded course. So I had a good knack for that already. And then when I figured out Clover had 30 acres of untapped land, I was like, this is our moneymaker. This is where we're gonna make things happen. And so I just got busy on it, and so I just had this vision. Like I knew that I wanted it to go around this lake, and I wanted to go through these elements of the landscapes and stuff. And it's really beautiful. It's a sight to see. It's not the easiest course, but the footing is good. It's a true cross country course. Some of the Fort Mill kids said it was the course of the year for them, and so I appreciate I appreciated their kind words about it because they're a very successful program. Those guys won state titles. And to hear those kids that have been on so many courses to say, "Hey, that was the best course I've ever ran on. It was difficult, but it was the best." I wear that with a badge of honor, man. And so I guess that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. I think that's, like I said, it's just so fascinating because I remember being in high school and we had a course, but man, I listening to you and talk about it, just like you just take it for granted too. You take it for granted, like having a home course and like really investing in it and being proud of it um and making people want to come to it too and just promoting it as well. That's the coolest thing. But let alone to create it from scratch and start clearing out fields and woods like that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
I want to, yeah.
the only other thing I wanted to say, things wouldn't have really came together for the Clover course if it wasn't for my dear friend Chris Artis over at Northwestern. Believe it or not, him and I got to know each other back in 1997. We went on a trip to London, England together on an international sports exchange thing, and we were roommates, man. Like we lived in different states and everything else, but back in '97 we hooked up. So I'd lived in Chicago, Atlanta, and California. And through those years, I somehow or another, him and I stayed in touch. Well, lo and behold, when we left California, there was one spot that we could move to that where my wife works for Ross Dress for Less distribution. She's an executive in the company, and they have a distribution center over here. And lo and behold, Chris Artist lives here, man. And
That's crazy.
so it was like God divine, you know. And so Chris last fall, because our county course is what we call Catawba Bend, and they were doing a bunch of construction on it last year, and Chris was like, "Hey, man, this is what we're gonna do. Let's make sure. Let's. I know you've been working really hard on the Clover course. Let's try to go ahead and get you that York County cross country championships." And I was like, "Man, you'd really do that for me?" And he was like, "Yeah, we should go ahead and try to make that happen." And so he kind of uh, took the bull by the horns and spoke up for me and our program, and we offered the York County cross country championships last fall, and then that really got the ball rolling, man, because we had that great invitational. Fort Mill and all these schools were singing our praises. Got some really good footage to share and promote, and so that's a big shout out to Chris Artist, because without him, I don't know if things would have taken off the way they did.
Yeah, it's always crazy how things like that happen. Just by, I mean, that's a crazy story. Um, how two people would just be so far apart and then come back together, let alone in the same area. Um, I want to ask because I think, uh, you hear like iconic workouts. Like obviously like the Michigan at the University of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you have kind of a go-to workout that you like? Hey, we're doing this at least once a year, whether it be in cross country or track.
Um, I can't say that I have anything specific, but I think if you ask the kids what I hills are opportunities, man. Hills. I work these kids on hills like nobody's business, and I don't have. I mean, I like 1Ks and quarters. Uh, uh, I like K's quite a bit, but I try to figure out very unique ways to incorporate hills in the workout. The kids will think that they're doing one particular type of workout, and I throw a shocker in there where they have to do like, 10 hill repeats in the middle of this workout where they weren't anticipating. Psychologically, they're thinking, oh, yeah, I'm just going to do this 1K loop or something. And then all of a sudden, I'm throwing five, one hill, 200-meter hill repeats on them or something like that. So I don't really have a quote unquote Michigan. I suppose there's probably some plans that I have that do have titles, but I don't know what they'd be called. So I just try to I just try to pull something out of the hat from time to time. But if someone's going to ask me, because hills were my success story, that's what changed the game for me. And so I'm always looking, like, if you any big bad hill that you see, I tell my kids, anytime you're out on a run, you take that hill and you run up it, and that's an opportunity for you today. You take every hill, you welcome it, embrace it. That could be the game changer for you. So.